December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m. The Ardennes forest exploded. German artillery pounded American positions across 80 miles. Then came the infantry, then the tanks. 3 German armies, 200,000 men, smashed into 4 American divisions. The Americans were outnumbered 4-1. Entire units were overrun in hours. The 106th Infantry Division lost 2 regiments in the first day. The largest American surrender since Bastogne. German tanks raced west toward the Meuse River. If they crossed it, they could split the Allied armies in half. At Chef headquarters in Versailles, the first reports seemed unbelievable. A major German offensive? Intelligence said Germany was finished. It took hours for the reality to sink in. This was not a local counterattack. This was a full-scale offensive that had caught everyone completely by surprise. Everyone except one man. At Third Army headquarters in Nancy, Colonel Oscar Koch had been waiting for this. For 11 days, he had been tracking 15 missing German divisions. Schaff said they were in reserve. Koch said they were concentrating for attack. He had predicted the Ardennes. He had predicted the timing. And Patton had believed him. When the first reports arrived December 16th, Patton called his staff immediately. Koch was right. Execute the contingency plans. While other headquarters scrambled to understand what was happening, Third Army was already moving. Orders flooded the communications network. Units began disengaging from operations in the Saar region. Supply depots shifted priorities. Artillery batteries prepared to move. Third Army was turning 90 degrees from eastward advance to northward attack. And they were doing it at a speed that should have been impossible. The military mathematics were clear. Third Army consisted of more than 100,000 walrus men, thousands of tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces. Supply lines stretched back hundreds of miles. Everything was oriented for operations advancing east into Germany. Fuel depots positioned for that direction, ammunition stocks pre-positioned for those objectives, repair facilities supporting that advance, supply convoys moving along those routes. To turn the entire army 90 degrees meant redirecting everything. Every supply convoy, every fuel truck, every ammunition depot. The standard calculation said such a reorientation required 7 to 10 days minimum. That assumed perfect conditions. In December, conditions were far from perfect. Snow covered the roads. Ice made movement treacherous. Visibility was poor. Vehicles broke down in the cold. By every standard military calculation, turning Third Army 90 degrees in less than a week was impossible. But Patton had not spent 11 days planning to follow standard calculations. When Koch predicted the German offensive, Patton ordered his staff to develop complete contingency plans. 3 different scenarios depending on where the Germans attacked. For each scenario, detailed operational plans, truck routes calculated to the mile, fuel requirements computed, supply priorities established, unit movements choreographed, artillery positions designated, everything planned down to the hour. When the German offensive began December 16th, Patton did not need to figure out how to respond. He already knew. The contingency plans existed. The preparations were complete. Third Army did not need 7 days to plan the movement. They needed 0 days. The planning was already done. They just needed to execute, and Third Army was built to execute fast. December 19th, the emergency meeting at Verdun. Eisenhower had called it because the situation was desperate. German forces had advanced 50 miles in 3 days. They had surrounded Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne Division was trapped. If Bastogne fell, the Germans could push to the Meuse. The strategic situation could collapse. Eisenhower needed someone to attack north and relieve Bastogne. He asked how long it would take. The generals studied their maps, the distances involved, the logistics required, the winter conditions. Bradley estimated a week. Montgomery said 10 days. Other commanders nodded agreement. That was the realistic timeline. Nobody could move faster. Then Patton spoke. I can attack in 48 hours with 2 divisions, 72 with 3. The room went silent. Every general turned to stare at him. Eisenhower knew Patton well, knew his aggressive style, knew his tendency to make bold promises. But this seemed beyond bold. This seemed delusional. Ike leaned forward. George, this is serious. 10,000 men are surrounded. If you promise relief and fail, they die. Stop grandstanding. Patton looked directly at Eisenhower. I am not grandstanding. I already gave the orders. Third Army is turning north right now. I have been planning this movement for 11 days. Eisenhower stared. 11 days? The German attack started 3 days ago. How could Patton have been planning for 11 days? Patton explained briefly. His intelligence chief predicted the offensive. He prepared contingency plans. When the attack came, he activated them. The movement was already underway. Third Army would attack in 48 hours. Eisenhower studied Patton's face, decided he was serious. Very well, get moving. Patton left Verdun and drove back toward his headquarters. Behind him, the other generals were arguing about whether Patton could possibly deliver. Bradley thought it was impossible. Montgomery called it American bravado. But Eisenhower had seen something in Patton's eyes, confidence based on preparation, not bluster. Meanwhile, across eastern France, Third Army was already executing the impossible maneuver. The 4th Armored Division had broken contact with German forces in the Saar. Their tanks were rolling north on roads that had been designated in the contingency plans. The 26th Infantry Division was loading onto trucks at assembly points that had been selected days earlier. The 80th Infantry Division was preparing to follow. Supply convoys were redirecting to routes that would support northward operations. Fuel trucks were moving to depots positioned along those routes. Artillery batteries were limbering up and beginning movement. The scale of the movement was staggering. Over 133 000 vehicles, tanks, trucks, half-tracks, jeeps, artillery pieces, supply vehicles, all moving simultaneously. The roads through eastern France were narrow and icy. Traffic control was critical. One breakdown could create massive jams. Patton's staff had planned for this. Military police were positioned at every critical intersection. Traffic control points established. Alternative routes designated. Radio communications coordinated movements. Units moved according to precise schedules. The 4th Armored had priority on the main routes. Infantry divisions used secondary roads. Artillery moved on tertiary routes, everything choreographed. Every commander knew their route, their timing, their destination. The complexity was immense, but the planning was meticulous. What looked like chaos from outside was actually controlled execution of detailed plans. The weather made everything harder. December 1944 was one of the coldest winters in European memory. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Snow fell continuously. Ice covered the roads. Vehicle engines struggled to start in the cold. Men suffered from frostbite. Visibility was poor. Driving conditions were treacherous. Trucks slid off icy roads. Tanks threw tracks in the snow. Vehicles broke down and had to be pushed aside. But the movement continued. Maintenance crews worked around the clock. Recovery vehicles pulled disabled trucks out of ditches. Replacement parts were rushed forward. Mechanics repaired vehicles in freezing conditions. The soldiers kept moving. They understood what was at stake. 10,000 paratroopers were surrounded in Bastogne. The Third Army was their only hope. They moved through conditions that should have stopped military operations entirely. They moved because Patton demanded it, and because the planning allowed it. By December 20th, lead elements of the 4th Armored Division were approaching the jump-off positions for the attack on Bastogne. They had moved more than 100 miles in less than 48 hours, through snow and ice, while breaking contact with enemy forces, while maintaining combat readiness. It was a military movement that defied standard logistics. Other Allied units were still trying to understand what was happening in the Ardennes. Third Army had already completed a 90-degree reorientation and was preparing to attack. The German commanders were equally shocked. Intelligence reports indicated American forces that had been fighting in the Saar were suddenly appearing on the southern flank of the Ardennes salient. How had they moved so fast? How had they reoriented so quickly? German planning assumed American response would be slow and disorganized. This was neither slow nor disorganized. This was executed with frightening efficiency. December 22nd, Third Army attacked. The 4th Armored Division drove north into the German flank. Behind them came the 26th Infantry Division. The 80th Infantry Division was moving into position. Patton had kept his promise. 2 divisions attacking in 48 hours, 3 divisions in 72. Exactly as he said, the fighting was brutal. German forces had fortified every village, every crossroad, every approach to Bastogne. American tankers and infantry fought through determined resistance. Progress was measured in hundreds of yards. Each mile was paid for in blood. But Third Army kept advancing. The logistics that had seemed impossible were working. Fuel reached the combat units. Ammunition resupplied the fighting elements. Casualties were evacuated. Reinforcements moved forward. The supply system Patton's staff had planned was functioning under combat conditions. The 90-degree turn was complete. Third Army was fully engaged in new operations less than a week after the German offensive began. Inside Bastogne, the 101st Airborne was holding on by willpower and diminishing resources. They were low on ammunition, low on food, low on medical supplies. The Germans had them surrounded. On December 22nd, German commanders sent a surrender demand. General McAuliffe sent back his famous one-word reply: nuts. The paratroopers would not quit. They knew relief was coming. They could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. Patton's attack was drawing near. They just had to hold a little longer. The weather cleared briefly on December 23rd, allowing supply drops by air. Food, ammunition, medical supplies parachuted into the surrounded town. It was not enough for extended operations, but enough to keep fighting. The 101st held every German attack. They were exhausted, freezing, and running low on everything. But they held. December 26th, 4:50 p.m. Lieutenant Charles Boggess commanded the lead tank of the 4th Armored Division. Tank named Cobra King. He had been fighting for 4 days straight, through German defenses, through villages, through constant resistance. His tank approached the village of Eisenhower. German positions blocked the road. Boggess attacked straight through them. His tank broke through the last defensive line. Ahead he saw American paratroopers, the 101st Airborne. Boggess had reached Bastogne. The corridor was open. The siege was broken. Word reached Patton within minutes. He called Eisenhower immediately. "We made it. The 101st is relieved." Eisenhower was stunned. Patton had done exactly what he promised, turned an entire army 90 degrees in 48 hours, attacked through winter storms, broken through German defenses, saved 10 Uhren-surrounded soldiers. It was impossible. And Patton had done it. The corridor to Bastogne was narrow. German forces attacked from both sides trying to close it. Third Army held. Supply convoys moved through the corridor into Bastogne, ammunition, food, medical supplies, reinforcements. The 101st Airborne received what they needed to keep fighting. The Germans tried repeatedly to cut the corridor. Third Army widened it instead. More units moved in. The 101st was no longer surrounded. They were part of a continuous line. The immediate crisis was over. The Battle of the Bulge would continue for another month. German forces would keep attacking. American casualties would mount. But the turning point had come. When Third Army relieved Bastogne in 4 days, it demonstrated that German offensive momentum was broken. The Allies could respond faster than the Germans expected. The surprise advantage was lost. From December 26th onward, the battle was about pushing the Germans back, not about German breakthrough. At Shaef headquarters, Eisenhower tried to understand how Patton had accomplished the movement. He called for detailed after-action reports. He wanted to know how Third Army had turned 90 degrees in 48 hours. The reports showed meticulous planning based on intelligence that Shaef had dismissed. Oscar Koch had predicted the German offensive. Patton had ordered contingency planning. For 11 days, staff officers developed complete operational plans, 3 different scenarios, every scenario detailed to the hour. When the German attack came, Third Army just executed pre-existing plans. They did not need time to figure out what to do. They already knew. Eisenhower realized that Patton had seen the threat coming when nobody else did. More importantly, he had acted on that intelligence. He had prepared. When the moment came, preparation made the impossible possible. Eisenhower was both impressed and chagrined. Impressed by Patton's foresight. Chagrined that Shaef had missed what Koch and Patton had seen clearly. The German commanders were equally shocked by Third Army's response. Post-war interrogations revealed their assumptions. They expected American response to be slow, days to understand what was happening, days more to develop plans, a week minimum to organize counterattacks. Instead, American forces attacked their flank in 4 days. General Hasso von Manteuffel commanded the 5th Panzer Army in the Ardennes. He later admitted that Patton's counterattack disrupted German timelines completely. The speed shocked them. They could not understand how an American army fighting 100 miles away suddenly appeared on their flank. Von Manteuffel said something more revealing. "We knew Patton would react quickly, but we did not know he had been preparing for our offensive before we launched it. That preparation changed everything. German plans assumed time to exploit their breakthrough. Patton gave them no time. His 90-degree turn put immediate pressure on their southern flank. They had to divert forces to meet his threat. Forces that should have been pushing west toward the Meuse. Patton's impossible maneuver stopped the German offensive's momentum. The mathematics of the movement remained staggering. Third Army moved 133 0 vehicles over 100 miles in 48 hours through winter storms while maintaining combat capability. The fuel consumption alone was enormous, thousands of gallons per hour. Supply convoys had to deliver constantly. Ammunition expenditure during the attack exceeded normal daily rates by factors of 10. The artillery fired thousands of rounds. The tanks consumed ammunition at combat rates. All of that had to be supplied through a logistics system that had just completed a 90-degree reorientation. Standard military planning said it could not be done. Patton's planning proved otherwise. The key was the 11 days of advance preparation. Supply depots had been pre-positioned. Fuel stocks had been moved. Ammunition caches had been established. When the movement began, the logistics to support it were already in place. Third Army did not improvise the support system. They activated systems planned days earlier. That made the impossible become merely difficult. The soldiers who executed the movement experienced it as organized chaos. Orders came constantly. Units moved at all hours. Sleep was minimal. Conditions were brutal. But everyone understood their mission: get to Bastogne, save the 101st. The clarity of purpose drove them forward through exhaustion and cold. Patton had created a culture in Third Army that valued speed and initiative. Commanders were trained to make decisions without waiting for orders. Supply officers were empowered to solve problems creatively. The organizational culture Patton built allowed Third Army to execute complex operations at speeds that seemed impossible. When the contingency plans activated, thousands of people at every level understood what needed to happen and made it happen. The 90-degree turn succeeded because it was not just Patton's plan. It was an entire army executing with common purpose and shared understanding. Eisenhower's shock at Patton's success revealed something about leadership and trust. Eisenhower was supreme commander. He oversaw all Allied operations, but he had not seen the German offensive coming. His intelligence staff had missed it. When Patton said he could attack in 48 hours, Eisenhower doubted him. The doubt was reasonable. What Patton promised seemed impossible, but Patton delivered. That forced Eisenhower to recognize that Patton understood something about the situation that others missed. Koch's intelligence had been more accurate than Schaeff's. Patton's preparation had been more thorough than any other commander's. The lesson was uncomfortable but clear. Sometimes subordinates see things that superiors miss. Sometimes preparation at lower levels exceeds what higher headquarters achieves. Eisenhower, to his credit, acknowledged this. He praised Third Army's performance. He recognized the achievement. He did not try to claim credit or minimize Patton's accomplishment. The cost of the Battle of the Bulge was horrific. More than 19 Zuausserend Americans killed, another 47 Zuausserend wounded. Over 23 Zuausserend captured or missing, the bloodiest American battle of the war. German casualties were even higher. Over 100 Hausarers killed, wounded, or captured. The offensive broke Germany's last reserves. After the Ardennes, German military capability was decisively weakened. But the cost would have been much worse without Patton's relief of Bastogne. If the 101st Airborne had been defeated, if the Germans had captured the Bastogne crossroads, the breakthrough might have reached the Meuse. The Allied armies might have been split. The war might have continued months longer. Patton's 90-degree turn in 48 hours prevented that outcome. His impossible maneuver saved not just 10, say 0 paratroopers, but potentially tens of thousands more by stopping German momentum before it became unstoppable. The intelligence failure at the strategic level contrasted sharply with success at the operational level. Schief intelligence missed the German buildup. 15 divisions disappeared from tracking. The offensive achieved complete surprise. That was strategic intelligence failure. But at Third Army, Koch's intelligence was accurate. He tracked the missing divisions, he predicted the offensive, he identified the target. He was right on every count. The difference was not in intelligence collection. Both Schief and Third Army received similar raw intelligence. The difference was in analysis and action. Schief analysts dismissed indicators that contradicted their assumptions. Koch analyzed indicators objectively. Schief leadership did not act on warnings. Patton acted on Koch's analysis. The lesson was that intelligence only matters if commanders trust it and act on it. Accurate warnings are worthless if nobody listens. Patton's reputation for aggressive leadership sometimes obscured his meticulous preparation. People remembered his bold statements and dramatic actions. They forgot the hours of planning that made bold actions possible. The 90-degree turn exemplified this. What looked like aggressive improvisation was actually careful execution of detailed plans. Patton was not reckless. He was prepared. He built an army capable of rapid movement because he anticipated needing that capability. He developed contingency plans because he understood that battles rarely go as expected. He trusted subordinates like Koch because he valued expertise over rank. The combination of aggressive mindset and meticulous preparation made Patton uniquely effective. He could move faster than other commanders because he had prepared to move faster. His confidence was not bluster. It was based on planning that others had not done. The 101st Airborne's defense of Bastogne became legendary, their refusal to surrender despite being surrounded. McAuliffe's nuts reply, their courage under impossible odds. They deserved every bit of recognition they received. But their survival depended on relief arriving in time. If Third Army had taken 7 days instead of 4, the 101st might have been overrun. If relief had taken 10 days, they certainly would have fallen. The paratroopers held because they knew help was coming. Patton made sure help arrived fast enough. The synergy between the 101st's defense and Third Army's relief was what saved Bastogne. Courage alone was not enough. Neither was rapid movement. It required both. The 101st bought time with their defense. Patton used that time to execute his 90-degree turn and break through. Together, they achieved what neither could have done alone. The impact of Patton's maneuver extended beyond Bastogne. When German commanders realized an entire American army had reoriented and attacked their flank in 4 days, it changed their assessment of American capabilities. They had assumed American forces were ponderous and slow to react. Patton demonstrated that assumption was wrong. The psychological impact was significant. German units facing Third Army knew they were up against a commander who moved faster than they expected and hit harder than they anticipated. That knowledge affected morale and decision-making. German commanders became more cautious about exposing flanks, more concerned about American counterattacks, less confident in their ability to exploit breakthroughs before Americans responded. Patton's impossible 90-degree turn taught the Germans that American forces could move as fast as Wehrmacht units. That lesson influenced German tactical decisions for the rest of the war. George Patton did not receive a medal specifically for the Bastogne relief. He received recognition for Third Army's overall performance in the Battle of the Bulge. But the 90-degree turn in 48 hours remained his most remarkable tactical achievement. Military historians studied it for decades. How did he do it? The answers were in the details. Koch's intelligence providing 11 days advance warning. Patton's decision to prepare contingency plans. Staff officers developing detailed movement schedules. Supply personnel pre-positioning resources. Commanders understanding their roles without detailed orders. Soldiers executing under brutal conditions. Every piece had to work. Remove any one element and the movement fails. Patton's genius was creating an organization where all the pieces worked together. The 90-degree turn succeeded because Third Army was built to do difficult things quickly. Patton built that army deliberately. The impossible maneuver was what he had prepared for. The story of Patton's 90-degree turn became a case study in military education. Staff colleges analyzed it. Officers studied the planning that made it possible. The lessons were clear. Accurate intelligence matters, but only if commanders act on it. Preparation enables speed. Detailed planning allows rapid execution. Trust in subordinates empowers initiative. Organizational culture determines what is possible. These lessons applied beyond World War II. They remained relevant in every subsequent conflict. The fundamentals Patton demonstrated at Bastogne continued to define effective military operations. See the threat, prepare the response, execute decisively. Those 3 steps sound simple. Patton proved that execution requires meticulous attention to detail and absolute commitment. His 90-degree turn in 48 hours saved the 101st Airborne, stopped the German offensive and shocked Eisenhower. It was impossible, and that is exactly why Patton made it happen.